Hello campfire jammers, are you sick of me yet? Alright, good, because we still got lots of ground to cover. So this is the Basic Chords Explained Part 2, okay? Now, hopefully as we've been going through these videos, you guys, as we've been playing through all these chords and all these strums, you guys have been looking for your own songs, your own favorite songs off the internet to play along with, and to, you got to make up your own little sort of guitar booklet to start opening yourself up to some of these songs, okay? One of the important things I like to mention is that you don't necessarily have to play all the intricate little finger work of any song that you're playing, okay? Many songs have an implied chord progression that you can just stick to as a campfire jammer. Because campfire jammers, it's more so about the singing and getting everybody into the song, So here's an example of what I'm talking about, okay? This is a Green Day song. The implied chord progression is G, C, and D, okay? Now, he does a little bit of intricate guitar stuff, but you don't need to do this. This is the song I'm talking about, right? It goes like... fuck. Right? Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road. Right, so that's there's a little bit of intricate pick work going on in there. But as a budding campfire rocker, you do not necessarily need to do all that funky stuff that he's doing with this pick. You can just play the implied chords, right? Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road. Time drives you by, the rest directs you where to go, right? So that is the implied chord progression, okay? And there are probably dozens of examples of songs like this out there where, there's all this funky, fancy stuff that they do in the actual song, but you can just play the implied chord progressions, okay? If you're into Justin Bieber, I imagine there's thousands of songs that just have easy little implied chord guitar progressions, which don't require a lot of fancy finger work at all anyway. But here is an example that I always like to give. It's a lovely example of this same kind of idea of implied chord progressions, okay? Everybody should know that John Mayer is not exactly a guitarist that caters to beginner guitarists, right? His stuff is all incredibly fancy sort of stuff. He's got riffs going all over the place. He's got Jimi Hendrix-y sort of scales going on. For the song Queens of California, he's doing the same thing. He's doing all this funky stuff up here. He uses his thumb in an incredible way. I would suggest for any guitarist, a new guitarist or an experienced guitarist, check out what he does with his thumb, because it's a very novel, well, it's not novel. Jimi Hendrix did it. A lot of African-American guitarists did this back in the day. They use their thumb as a sort of a bass note for the lower notes that they're going to play. That keeps their bass note, and then they can play all these intricate finger workings on the higher parts of the guitar. But anyway, that'll be for later, I guess. But so Queens of California uses all this funky, weird stuff, but there is an implied chord progression, okay? Just like I showed you in that last song. Now, I'm putting a capo on the 2nd fret, and you have to do that in order to play this song in the key that John Mayer plays in it, okay? So the implied chord progression is A, G, D, A, G, D, A, G, D, A, right? Goodbye cold, goodbye rain, goodbye sorrow, goodbye shame. I'm headed out west with my headphones on, boarding a flight with the song in the back of my soul, and no one knows. E, right? So that implied chord progression is the A, G, and D, and then there is an E chord thrown in there, right? So do you see what I mean? That's all we need as campfire jammers, is we need the implied chord progression, okay? At first, anyway, that's all we need, and then as we go along, you know, we can start throwing in all the kind of fancy stuff in there as we learn to play these songs, you know, and then we can really blow some people's minds. So our next chord that we're going to get into is the silvery, brownish, earthy sort of a D chord, okay? The D chord is a chameleon. It's got all these different implied chord colors and chord emotive qualities hidden and implicated in it at once. It's got the low, drooling, earthy bass notes of an earthy, dirty sort of chord, and it's also got the high, trebly sort of serene, airy sounds of an airy, silvery sort of chord, right? So it's a great friend to a songwriter because it's very versatile. You can do very much with it. One thing I have to stress when you're playing the E chord is that you can't play that low E note no matter what. It's even worse to play that low E note in a D chord than it is in a three-fingered C, okay? You can hear it. It's just very dissonant and gross, and it's just, you can smell it coming off of the guitar, right? This gives you a great sense of presence for your strumming hand, okay? I bet this whole time you've just been strumming along to all these chords, right? But, you know, now you have to watch. Now you have to watch your step. There are potholes for you to fall into, okay? So try to focus the swing of your pick. Yeah, if you're not doing the country 1-5 and just doing normal strums, try to focus the swing of your pick on the higher, the thinner guitar strings, okay? The higher guitar strings that are down here, right? Because you want to almost pretend like that low E note has become the hot element of a toaster oven, okay? You want to just completely stay away from it. You know when the stove element is on, it's beat red, and you have a natural compulsion to keep away from it, right? Because it's just, you don't want to burn yourself, right? That is the compulsion you want to have to stay away from that low E note when you're playing the D chord, okay? Just stay away from it like it's got the plague, all right? So now the D chord can be found in the key of G, the key of D, obviously, and the key of A as well, right? And the accented notes for the country 1-5 rhythm of the D major, let me just bring this over here a bit. The accented notes for the 1-5 country shuffle are the third string down, which is the low D note, and then chukka, and then the second pluck is on the second string down, which is the A string, right? And then another chukka. Pluck, chukka, pluck, chukka, pluck, chukka, pluck, chukka, pluck, chukka, pluck, chukka, pluck, chukka. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, you know what I mean, right? And so our D chord, the D major is great for songwriters, okay? A lot of songwriters will do funny things with the D chord because that low D note is can always stay there as a nice low fat D note while the higher part of your guitar strings changes up into different mini chords within those chords, okay? This is a D, this is a G with a D bass, this is an A with a D bass, I'm sorry. And then back to that G with the D bass, right? And so that D can stay on the bass, and you can start mixing up combinations of chords with that low D note, okay? But here's an example of what I'm talking about. Jimmy Page does this a lot, right? Oh, you've got so much, so much, so much. This is the part I'm talking about. Many times I've loved. You know what I'm talking about. But anyway, that's Over the Hills and Far Away by Led Zeppelin. And what I was talking about is he goes up onto these very high chords up here, but the ba 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 ba, that drolling bass, that D, the low D bass note is constantly going out, is constantly going throughout that whole guitar part anyway, okay? Here's a little treat for you guys. I've been working on this, I've got the song kind of written out, and it's got a chord progression that does the same thing, okay? You notice that I go from the D to a G with a D bass, and then back to that D, okay? It's kind of quick, but just check it out. This is kind of cool. Oh. Well, the sun was low and the air was cold when she left me standing out on my own. The gypsy queen of 1,000 dreams has got no home, no telephone. Right? You can do that along with the D chord, you know? It's just a very, very versatile, very playable chord. It's all right here, folks, you know? We can make up songs, you know? You just gotta know the chords, you gotta know the rules, and you got it. Okay, so the next chord on our list is the D minor chord. Okay, so we're going to, it's kind of an awkward chord for some people, but not more awkward than harder bass chords like the F or the B minor, okay? So we're going to take that high F sharp note, which is the second fret of the high E string, with our middle finger. We're going to take that down 1 fret, like this, okay? And in order to do that, we've got to switch our hand position around a little bit. As we can see here, our third finger is still on that same fret, the same note, the third fret of the B string, the high B string. Our second finger is now on the second fret of the G string, and our first finger is now on the first fret of that high E string. Okay? There's that dark, grungy D minor sound that we love, right? So the D minor has a sort of blackish, reddish, burgundy kind of, you know, gunky, oily, emotional kind of sound, which I think that the famous composer Beethoven was fond of exploiting, right? And so, yeah, the same rules apply for the D minor as do for the D major. Okay, so what we're doing is we're avoiding that top E string, the bottom, you know, the low E string, like the plague, like a hot toaster oven. We're just going to completely go over it. And the country shuffle notes for the D minor are also the same as the D major, okay? We're going the third string down, that's the low D string, and then shaka, and then we have the second string going down, that's our low A string, that's our second pluck, and then another chuck, pluck, chukka, pluck, chukka, pluck, chukka, pluck, chukka, pluck, chukka, pluck, chukka. Right? So there are, you know, there are lots of examples of songs that are in D minor, okay? Here's one by Sam Roberts, I'm sure you guys will know. We got one life to live, but we're doing it wrong. You see, got brother down, but it's nothing to me. It's nothing to me. That's D minor, C, and G in there, okay? Now, D minor corresponds mostly to the key of F, though I have found that it seems, you know, it's in 1,000 songs that feature the key of C, that's in the key of C, okay? So it seems to have an affinity for the key of C, but theoretically speaking, the key of F is the main branch that the D minor kind of branches off of, and I'll explain that. I'll explain what that means a little bit later. So now that we've gone through our most basic of our chords, the easier ones anyway, now we're going to go into the uglier of the basic chords, okay? And that's pretty much the F major chord and the B minor chord. Now, the reason these chords are so difficult, especially for almost impossible for beginning guitarists, is because we are barring certain frets. Okay, to bar means that you are taking more than one string on the same fret with one finger. Okay, once you get really good, you'll be able to take a whole fret just with this one finger, and then play another chord with these 3 fingers, but we'll leave that for a little bit later. For now, we're going to learn our first bar chord, which is our F major chord, okay? Now, this is what this little this little unhappy face on the top of these two notes, that means that you're barring those two notes with the same finger. Okay, we can see these are the fingers that we're using for this chord, and these two higher notes are both being played by the same finger. That for the first finger, we can see that here, right? Okay, so that's why these chords are such a nightmare for some people at first. But what you want to do for the F chord is you want to play it on the fat part of your finger, but not necessarily right in the middle. You've got to go right on the side a little bit, if you can see where I'm pointing. Okay, that's the golden spot to play those two strings on the F chord. And so you really kind of have to turn your wrist a little bit right at the start. If you got to do it, you got to do it, just as long as you start playing that chord, right? Now, you won't really be able to play this chord until you get the proper calluses on the side of your finger, and it's just a really hard, you got to get the muscle development to use your fourth finger in that chord anyway, but, it should all come. I bet you'll be playing it within the next 2 to 3 weeks, okay? So the F chord combines elements of the C chord and the D chord, and you'll know what I mean in a moment. Just like with the C chord, you have a choice between playing the three-fingered F chord, which is kind of a little bit easier, I suppose, and then you have a choice between playing that and the four-fingered F chord, which I always suggest playing first because you want to get into the habit of using the proper chord as soon as possible right off the bat so that you don't have to break the habit later. Also another great thing about this chord, using the four-fingered chords, is that you give that pinky an exercise, okay? That often unused fourth finger that, you've got 4 fingers for a reason, so you might as well use them, right? And here's an important point, okay? You got to make your decision right now whether you're going to play with a 3-fingered F or a 4-fingered F, because the 4-fingered F, like the D chord, it only has one note to stay away from, like a hot toaster element, okay? And that's that low E string, okay? When you're playing an F chord, you want to really avoid you want to avoid that low E string, the bottom E string, okay? When you're playing a 3-fingered F chord, you're not only going to ignore that low E string like it's got leprosy, but you've also got to ignore the second string like it's got leprosy, okay? So the only notes that you should be hearing on a 3-fingered chord are those 4 highest strings, the high E, the high B, the G, and then the D, okay? So that's why the 3-fingered F has sort of a tinny, not a very bassy sound, because you've taken out that key bass note to give it a kind of bassy sound, right? Without that note, it sounds a lot less bassy and a lot less wide and powerful, right? But at least you're playing the thing, as I always say, So try playing, I would suggest playing the F chord, the 3-fingered F chord, for a little while so you can just start jamming it, so you can start actually using that chord. And then after a while, once you've gotten used to it and you're getting better with chord transitions, you can switch back to that 4-fingered F chord so that a professional guitarist won't brush you away like an amateur, If you're going to be my student, you've got to go for the gold. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So the accented notes for the country shuffle, the 1-5 country shuffle on the F chord, are the same as they are on the D chord, okay? If we're going to plant our 4-fingered F chord, we're going to try to plant it there like a firm bush. And then our 2 notes are the D string, which is the 3rd string going down, right? That's our first pluck, and then we have a chukka, and then our second pluck is on the A string, the 2nd string going down. Pluck, chukka, 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 right? So that's the 1-5 country rhythm, okay? So if you're going to do the 1-5 country shuffle on the 3-fingered F chord, you have to make sure that you're bringing that 3rd finger, which is this finger right here, you've got to move that from the 3rd fret of the D string to the 3rd fret of the A string, okay? Just like we did with the 3-fingered C chord for playing the country shuffle, we've got to do the same thing for the 3-fingered F chord on the country shuffle, okay? Now watch this finger, right? Pluck, chukka, pluck, chukka, pluck, chukka, pluck, chukka, pluck, chukka, pluck, chukka, pluck. So this is another reason why, in the long run, the 4-fingered F chord really is kind of easier, because you don't have to do any of that nonsense with your hands. You can just firmly root this F chord like a plant, and then you can play whatever strums you want to play with this hand without having to worry about this hand, okay? But you still got to avoid that low E string. Now, the F chord has a pinkish, rosy sort of, kind of light reddish, pinkish kind of color. And it corresponds with the key of B flat, which we won't really get into in these lessons. And it also corresponds with the key of F, obviously, and the key of C, okay? F and C go together like bread and butter. They're always found together. You'll find that a lot. Here's a chilling little example of that, okay? So this is Drops of Rain by Train. Is it called Drops of Rain? Anyway, you'll know the song, okay? Oh, Drops of Jupiter. Ha, sorry. Now she's back in the atmosphere, the drops of Jupiter in her hair. She acts like summer and walks like June. Reminds me, no. She acts like summer and walks like rain. Remind me that there's time to change. Hey, 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 hey. Right? So that's C, G, and F. That's a hugely famous chord progression. You know, it's used in a lot of songs. So I know it's a tricky one, but the F is, unfortunately for beginning guitarists, one of the more crucial chords you can really learn throughout all these guitar chords that you're going to learn, okay? But, you know, if you play through it a lot, play through songs with the F in it, you'll be getting the transitions from the F chord to all the other chords like nothing in no time. It's inevitable. And eventually you'll be playing them swiftly and easily. Now our next basic chord is our B minor chord, okay? And this chord is another headache, or I guess I should say a finger ache for a lot of people. Because what you're doing is you have to bar this whole, this is our first full bar chord, okay? And you have to bar this whole second fret with just your one pointing finger, okay? So this is going to require a lot of muscle development to be able to play fully anyway. But it's an important chord to learn, okay? So this is our B minor chord. It's got a gunky, sort of oily, you know, a shimmering black ink color to it. Almost like motor oil reflecting in the sunlight. That's what I like to think of the B minor, right? Now, the B minor corresponds to the key of D, and it's also found in the key of A, and sometimes it's found in the key of G, okay? Let's look at Hotel California by the Eagles. It's in the key of G, right? On the dark desert highway, cool wind in my hair, warm smell of colitas rising up through the air. Right, hopefully your voice is a little bit better than mine, but that's a great song to learn for maybe not beginners, because there's a lot of chords in it, so it's a good song for anybody to learn. Another song with a B minor in it is Pink Floyd uses it quite a bit, right? Hello, 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 is there anybody in there? Just not if you can hear me. Is there anyone at home? Right, so that's our B minor chord in that song. A very emotive chord, you know, emotional sort of dark kind of sounding chord, you know, just like all the other minors, obviously. Now, the accents for the 1-5 country shuffle rhythm on the B minor are the same as they are in the C chord, the A chord, and the A minor chord. We're going to have our first pluck on that second string going down, the A string. Once we've got our hand planted, we're going to hit the second string of the A string. We're going to pluck that, then chukka, and then we're going to hit the next string down, the bottom low E string. That's our second pluck. Chukka, pluck, chukka, pluck, chukka, pluck, chukka, pluck, chukka, pluck, chukka, pluck, chukka, right? Now, this is, like I said, our first bar chord, so don't get discouraged if you can't play it right away, okay? It probably took me a month, probably longer than a month, you know, just to get my head around the chord, let alone getting the fingering for it. So don't feel bad about loafing on this chord, okay? What I suggest for beginners is that we learn the Poonsy way of playing it. And that is basically this right here, okay? That's the way I showed it to you in our original chord progressions, okay? This is just so at least you can, at least you can play it, right? If it comes up in a song that you're trying to learn and it's just way too much for you to get that huge arch of the B minor regular chord, then just play this easier way of playing it, okay? So what you're doing is you're taking your first finger and you're putting the tip of it, like any other chord, you put the tip of that finger on the 2nd fret of the high E string, okay? And that's what gives us that sort of easier way of playing the B minor chord. Now, it doesn't have any bass at all, and you've got to, just like with the 3-fingered F, you've got to avoid these bottom strings, the bottom E and the bottom A, got to avoid them like a hot toaster element, because they just don't belong in the B chord at all, right? But at least if you're playing this style of B minor chord, at least you can play it, and you don't crap out in the middle of that song you've been trying to show your girlfriend for a few months now, so play around with it, this B minor chord, but don't get comfortable, okay? If you're going to be my student, you got to learn to play the chords the real way. Okay, so congratulations, folks. If you've been following along in these videos so far, you should know all of your basic chords, and you should be able to jam to some of your own favorite personal songs that you've been hopefully playing to on your own outside of these videos. You're getting some jam wings already, and if you've been playing some of your own favorite songs, then you're pretty much almost ready to rock the campfire already. So in our next few videos, we're going to get in-depth into the actual notes that make up the chords on the guitar, why you're playing those individual notes, and what makes up a chord itself, okay? Music is all connected. There's nothing in music that was just randomly thrown out there. It's all connected to some kind of reason in the grand musical scheme, okay? Chords are not shaped the way they are simply for the convenience of it, They're all connected to a system of theory. And these next lessons on chord structure are going to be taking us into this theory. And they cater, the lessons in the next video cater more to the songwriter side of the guitar. And they're not necessary for rocking a campfire, So that's why these videos are going to say skippable for songwriters and dedicated jammers only. You can get by with everything that you've learned so far if you just want to start ripping some songs, but if you've got that same alchemical itch like I do to create stuff out of the ether, then you'll probably check out the next video. At least give it a listen, see what it's all about. If it doesn't interest you, then go on to the next one. Yeah, like I said, if you feel like skipping the next video and going to the next important lesson, which is going to be about key signatures and chord progressions, then you can just skip the next video and go to that important video, because that's a video that everybody should watch. Yeah, I guess listen to your heart and listen to your spirit and do what your spirit wants. I'm Dustin Cormier. Peace and love, my friends, and I guess I'll see you in the next one.